Good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the presentation of the fourth Swiss PropTech study, a study that has been done yearly in collaboration with Credit Suisse. I'm going to share my screen now, and we can go through the presentation. I'd like to welcome all of our guests and listeners today, and especially our members of Swiss PropTech and esteemed guests who are taking part in this presentation today. Before we start, I'm going to introduce the study team that has taken part in this study this year. I'm going to inform you a little bit about the study itself. I'm going to introduce to you the three feature PropTechs, and then Freddie Hasenmeiler from Credit Suisse is going to present you the findings, and we're going to have a little discussion afterwards and some outlook as well. The team behind this great study this year have been Freddie Hasenmeiler and Gideon Aschwanden from Credit Suisse, and myself from Swiss PropTech. Freddie is the head real estate economics from Credit Suisse, and Gideon is the lead digital scientist and global real estate from Credit Suisse Asset Management. Myself, I'm the managing director of Swiss PropTech and the representative of the community. Now, PropTechs, as we've read about and heard about in the past months, again, have been gaining importance and awareness again. We've reached a number of over 300 Swiss PropTechs in Switzerland, and it's another great reason to do this yearly study together with Credit Suisse. So before we move on, I'd like to give the voice over to Gideon and ask you, what is the motivation behind this study and behind the survey in general? Could you elaborate a little bit?
Sure. Thank you for being here. We're looking at the whole real estate life cycle, and we noticed that there is a lot of fragmentation happening. We have everything from product development, transaction management, to property and facility management. And in each one of those elements of the real estate life cycle, we see gaps. And the PropTechs which are coming in are trying to fill these gaps. And we are trying to, as asset managers, trying to identify the future collaborators which we are having to actually find the right kind of tool to actually get a whole chain of value which we can provide to our customers. So a study like you see today is really essential for us to identify where the development is currently going and where we can have a new tool or a new partner to fill one of those gaps. And that's why we need this study.
Thank you for elaborating. And I think it's greatly appreciated by all parties involved to see where the journey is going and to see where we're coming from. Now, this is the fourth study we're doing together with Credit Suisse. We want to say thank you very much for your trust and for this collaboration. It's always very nice to participate. The focus this year is on success factors of PropTechs, and we're going to elaborate on that in a couple of minutes. Sadly, we cannot present the study this year physically, as we wanted to do that during the Swiss PropTech Day, but unfortunately, we had to postpone the Swiss PropTech Day to September, because COVID-19 regulations are still pretty strict and we couldn't do it physically. But nevertheless, thank you for doing it and for joining us today virtually. And now I'd like to introduce our three PropTechs of this year's study. They have been chosen randomly. They have participated in the survey and thus were able to present themselves in the study as well. We have three companies here today. I'll start on the left side with Enno. We have Basil Enger here. He's an account manager at Enno. And Enno is a data-driven company that provides solutions that increase energy efficiency and reduce real estate environmental footprints. Then Tuan Nguyen, he's the CTO and co-founder of Hegias. Hegias provides an automated and browser-based CMS solution for visualization and communication with virtual reality for the construction and real estate industry. And last but not least, Dr. Peter Staub, a name I'm pretty sure is well known within the Swiss PropTech scene. He's the president, the chairman of the board of directors of Lucy, and Lucy is a digital 3D GIS platform for the transformation of our living space. And before we go to the actual findings, I'd like to give them a voice as well. So I'd like to ask them about their USPs, and I'll start with Basil on the left side. Basil, could you tell me the USP that Enno is providing?
Yeah, so as you said, we provide data-driven solution that increase energy efficiency. But so basically with our technology, property owners can achieve quick energy saving. So from the third month of use, and then get accurate and reliable data to prepare at best renovation works.
Perfect, nice and easy. Thank you very much. I'd like to move on to Tuan. A couple of words about Hegias.
So hi everybody, and thanks Lars for the introduction. So Hegias is our mission is to democratize virtual reality. So we enable all the people in the planning industry or future property owners to see their future home in virtual reality. So right now, if you want to do that, you need an agency, and it costs a lot of money and costs a lot of time to do that. And we try to automate this process. So you can imagine that you can drag and drop your 3D file into our system, and within minutes, you can walk through your future home and change furniture or materials and feel how it's going to be like. Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you for explaining. And last but not least, Peter, a couple of words about Lucy.
Thank you for the introduction, Lars. Main questions for us is not what we can, but which problems that we solve. So in our overall market view, we recognize that the more careful use of our resources is one of the biggest challenges of humans and companies. And this means resources in our context are existing building, free parcels, areas, town, and even villages. And if you want to optimize the use of these properties, you need a lot of information and integrate all stakeholders along these processes. And this process today is very inefficient and expensive as well as for public and for private organizations. Lucy solves this problem with a multi-sided platform. That means we connect suppliers of data and data-driven services with public and private investors. And in our kernel, we integrate all public open data about the environment and allow existing companies as well as PropTechs to bring in their own data and services. So the final USP for Lucy is to provide all necessary data and models to evaluate the potential of parcels and areas to support private and public developments with the integrations of all stakeholders in the very early phase of the development.
Thank you very much. 3 PropTechs, 3 different solutions, very interesting, and gives you a good idea of how diverse the Swiss PropTech scene is. And now I'd like to go to our main piece today, which is the presentation of our findings of the 4th Swiss PropTech study. And I'd like to ask you, Freddie, now to take over. I'm going to switch the presentation to your slides, and I'd like to give the voice over to you.
Thank you, Lars. And it is a big pleasure for me to present the results of the Swiss PropTech survey, the 4th Swiss PropTech survey that we do. With this survey, we actually wanted to focus on the success factors of PropTechs, but we also cover other themes like the impact of the COVID-19 on the sector. Last year, PropTech sector, like other sectors as well, was actually overtaken by the coronavirus crisis, and some questions were raised. However, unlike other sectors, COVID-19 was the first real test for the young PropTech sector. Many real estate companies were severely challenged by the pandemic and put innovation projects on hold. And I think this has also been felt by the PropTechs. They had to fight hard in order to continue their projects. And we wanted to find out a bit more about how they have behaved during that period of crisis. We also realized that investors' willingness to take risk fell sharply in last year. And so one of the major reasons to have this survey again was also to see a little bit what has been the impact of COVID-19 on the sector. The on-day survey has taken place in May. 62 PropTechs from all PropTech categories took part in the survey. Maybe you could show the next slide, Lars, where we see that they are stemming or coming from different categories. We have two categories, for example, the software sector and also the smart building IoT sector, which are a little bit overrepresented regarding the overall sector. On the other side, we have the construction sector, the finance sector, and also the service sector, which is a little bit underrepresented. So bear in mind that depending on the structure of the surveys that change every year a little bit, it might be not 100% correct to compare the different results from one year to the other. Nevertheless, they give us and you a good overview about the sector and how the different PropTechs are doing. On the next slide, we see that 2020 was truly a challenging year for the PropTech sector as well. Due to the Corona pandemic, the sentiment and the confidence plummeted quite impressively. What you see here is the PropTech Confidence Index compiled by the company Metaprop. That is a venture capitalist company that is investing worldwide in PropTechs. They measure this sentiment every half a year. And in the first half of 2020, this index plummeted quite deeply, only to then recover quite nicely until the end of the year, ending the year with the highest numbers ever seen. So the consternation, you can say, was short-lived. Confidence recovered very quickly, and it looks even better than ever before. So may I ask at this point to maybe Basil, how did you experience the impact of COVID-19? On what were the kind of challenges that your PropTech faced during 2020?
Yeah, sure. I would say that we were pretty lucky because during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to change our behavior. And we've noticed that people had to think more deeply about sustainability in general. And so for our business, which is to reduce environmental impact, it was kind of an opportunity for us. But I would say that what we suffered the most, was probably the same for the whole industry. It was the lack of real events and real contact with people. So it wasn't good for everyone to keep good relationships with clients and partners. But except this, we did well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So actually, the older a PropTech has already been, the more easily it could actually just follow the already established contacts. How was this with you, Tuan? Did you have already these contacts established, or was it difficult for you to continue with the existing contacts?
Yeah, actually, I mean, ironically, our solution would be perfect for a situation like this, if you can't have real contacts with people, because with our solution, you just need a headset and then you can meet people virtually, right? So they can be in any place. And the thing is, the pandemic came like 1 year too early, if I want to be sarcastic. And yeah, so we had the same problem as Basil. We didn't have those fairs, right? Because we need to put the headset on the head of the people so they can see how it's going to be like. So that was a big issue for us, and we had to to let go of some salespeople that we built up in Germany, for example. So it was there were some tough decisions. Yeah.
Okay, and so my question therefore goes to Gideon. How busy was the real estate industry in coping with that pandemic in the first half of 2020?
We experienced at the beginning that bit of a pushback. Nobody was expecting that it works, and also especially in the acquisition and sales, we actually saw some reduction of activity because of the visits, especially internationally. Generally speaking, we actually saw a very minor drop, and we haven't seen much of the expected delinquencies which we actually were expecting due to the reduction in retail, reduction in footfall, and in retail square meters. So we haven't actually seen the big drop. And so we are very optimistic for this year.
Okay. So the depressed mood was actually only temporary. And but nevertheless, the depressed mood was reflected last year in a smaller volume of venture capital invested globally. The Center for Real Estate and Technology and Innovation says that the volume dropped by 25% down to about $24 billion US. So and investment tended to focus a bit more on larger deals and later entry points. But if we look into the numbers of PropTechs, Lars, please go to the next slide. We only find a small impact of the crisis. As you can see here, you see here the replies of all the PropTechs on our questions. How has the number of employees changed in the past 12 months? And as you can see, almost 80% of the PropTechs further increased their employment. 80% said it's the same as before, and only 3.3% had to decrease the number of employees. On average, it was a plus of 71%, which is quite impressive. And it's already in the past, a couple of years ago, we asked the same question, and they also delivered quite a high number. But nowadays, we can see that actually the number they have delivered was quite accurate and is equivalent to what we see as numbers delivered today. So the pandemic did not affect the optimisms, nevertheless, not at all in the sector. As you can see by the dark green bars, that's the expectation of the next 12 months. So the PropTechs still expect quite a bright future and further increase of employment. On the next slide, we see that the setbacks in revenue figures are also quite limited. A small minority of almost 10% suffered from a decline of revenues. Further 11.5% had no variation, no growth of revenues. And the rest, that's almost 80%, replied that they could increase revenues in the last year, sometimes quite impressively again. On average, revenues increased by 68% in 2020. This means that the Swiss PropTech sector, as well as the real estate industry as a whole, I would say, came through this crisis without any big blemishes or not that much hurt. So may I ask Peter, at this point of time, in the short term, the pandemic might have slowed down the development of some PropTechs, but in the longer term, the sector should actually clearly benefit from the pandemic. Do you also already experience that the real estate industry is much more interested in tech solutions?
I think it goes more and more better, but overall, the real estate market is still in an early stage of digitization. Okay. Small hand of big companies like Credit Suisse and other ones are quite far with their developments. But a lot of companies first have to do their homework. They have to build up their own data fundament, and these are the preconditions to enable digital services at all. So I expect that there is a big market potential for PropTechs that is growing, but I do not expect an exponential growing, but it will go up slowly.
Also, PropTechs expect a bright future. If we look at the green bars, you can see what is the expectation of revenue growth in 2021. We see still some of them expect a decline of the revenues, but the bulk of all the PropTechs think that they will still be able to increase revenues, and even going to 2020, no, not 2020, 22 and 23, they replied that they expect growth to continue. Even the numbers of PropTechs, on the next slide, we see that the numbers of PropTechs also have increased further. Here goes a big thank you to Heinz Schwitter, the one who is actually collecting all the time these numbers and these PropTechs. We see that meanwhile we have reached with over 320 entries. This means that Switzerland actually has an exceptionally high density of PropTechs by international standards, because in Germany, a much larger country, we only can count about 330 PropTechs. So Switzerland actually is quite dense in terms of PropTechs. And this steadily increasing number of PropTechs means that new PropTechs with similar or even identical business ideas are entering continuously the market. None of them all, or only some of them will be able to position themselves successfully. For example, just recently, I had to learn that the big German online portal Immowelt will close its service in Switzerland by September 2020. No, not 2020, 22. September 22, that will be the end for Immowelt in Switzerland. That was a new information for me, I think, last week. And this raises the question, what are the success factors for the PropTechs having a successful business? And we wanted with our survey also to give an answer to this question. First of all, maybe I can show on the next slide a first question to success factors, because we also wanted to know from the PropTechs how many products do they have, how many services do they employ, and out of the answers that you can see on this chart, you see that the bulk of the PropTechs only have actually 1 to 4 products. So this means that you don't need to have 6 or 7 or even more products. It's actually enough to have 1 or 2. As you can see by the light green bars, the majority of the established PropTechs, half of the established PropTechs, they only have 1 or 2 products. So here may I ask Basil, is focus on a small number of products a good strategy? Is this maybe a way to be successful? And how many products do you have?
Yes, I think it's the best strategy, because what is the most important for me is to focus on one main problem to solve. But however, this should not restrict us from developing other features on top of it. And as an example, when we developed our technology, the first goal was to reduce quickly energy consumption from the heating systems. But we kept in mind that our technology should be scalable, so we can easily add new features such as monitoring for solar panels, water, electricity, and etc. So for me, I think that focusing on one product at first is a good strategy to solve the biggest pain we identified in the market. And it's a good strategy to go to market, but then I think we all should be flexible and adaptable and be open-minded and creative enough to add other features or services.
So Tuan, how about Hegias? Are you also constantly screening the number of products or solutions and then focusing on the most successful or most beautiful ones? Or how is it at Hegias?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is at this stage where we are, this is one of our main problems because I like to compare our solution to a Swiss Army knife. So we have we have a lot of tools in our knife, and yeah, we have to pick out the one that cuts the most sausages if I want to stay with this image. And yeah, I think the most successful startups, they say it's focus or fail. So this is what we try to do now. I mean, we have a lot of features that we have like the materialize or furnituring and collab stuff. But I think at the end of the day, we just want to give the planning industry or the future homeowners the possibility to walk in their unbuilt homes, and I think we will focus on this one.
Thanks a lot for this exceptional image of the army knife, because as I can remember, most of the time you use only the knife, and that's what is important. Yes. In order to shed some more light on this question of success factors, we motivated already last year 2 participants of a Master of Advanced Studies course to do some kind of pre-study and to elaborate based on the literature and based on interviews with experts to elaborate kind of a long list of success factors. They conducted a qualitative survey and came back with 15 success factors. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Peter, you have been one of the experts being asked. Am I right?
Yes, I took part at this.
At this stage, the circle closes. Yes, now he's again with us. It has been Iliana Häusli and Michael Wicki, which have done this pre-study, and we then have taken over the results and wanted to know whether we could replicate the results with our much bigger survey done this year. And with our survey, we could actually replicate the results. Lars, please go one slide further. Here you can see we asked the participants of the survey to allocate 15 points to these success factors, and you can see the result. We had actually almost the same result as the pre-study, namely 3 factors at the top: customer benefit, quality of the core team, and scalability. And we even had the same ranking, namely customer benefit at the top and then quality of the core team. Then in the middle field, you see what has been the result: the unique selling proposition, timing, network, business model, and ease of product integration. Here we have a little bit more diversity regarding to the pre-study. For example, funding was among the middle field in the pre-study, whereas timing was in the pre-study not among the middle field, but at the end of the list. So there is some differences, but overall we see actually quite the same picture. We also asked the PropTechs to rate their own PropTechs in relation to these success factors, and that's the result you can see on the next slide. We asked the PropTechs to say whether they feel themselves being good positioned, very strong positioned regarding a factor, or very weak positioned. Lars, please, next slide. Then you will see the result. Yes, thank you. You can see that the ratings were relatively homogeneous. I had to cut the scale. You just see now between 4 and 8 points. On average, PropTech see themselves best positioned in terms of customer benefit with 7.9 points. Quality of the core team with a little less than that. The uniqueness, that means low danger of being imitated, with 7.5 points. They also give themselves good ratings in terms of customer focus, 7.2 points. And they have been a little bit critical with scalability. I think that's might be a problem for one or the other PropTech, that scalability is not quite given. That's something which is very beautiful if you have a product that is very scalable, but not every product can bring this to the table. Furthermore, PropTech see themselves at least well positioned in terms of timing, which is also, I think, quite an important factor, and also fundraising. I think fundraising, some of them think that it's quite important, and others doesn't seem to have that much a problem in raising funds. Obviously, if we look deeper into the answers. So I will spare the discussion with or about the success factors for the discussion later on. Let me just finish our results from the survey. We have also a little bit done some exercises about cooperation. Cooperation has been in the middle field, that cooperation is also network, and cooperation is an important success factor. So we wanted to know from the PropTech sector how many cooperations are they doing, and with what kind of partners. So the result is on the next slide, please, where we see that 88% of all the PropTechs that have answered say that they do have cooperations in place. In Germany, it's only 72%. Then the majority of them replied that they have cooperations with other PropTechs, 78%, and 68.5% responded that they have cooperations with real estate companies. The high willingness to cooperate in the PropTech sector clearly contrasts a little bit with the situation in other real estate sectors. If you compare that, for example, with the general contractor business, where competition is actually the main rule, it's quite a difference to the PropTech sector, where a lot of players are actually trying to cooperate with each other. So let's have a look at the drivers of cooperation. Maybe we find the answer lying there. Why there is so much cooperation in the sector. Lars, next slide, please. We see that the access to broader client groups and the possibility to building an ecosystems are among the main drivers, broadening the network, increasing awareness, higher market power. This all means that by doing cooperations, you're actually able to grow faster, to need less time in order to broaden your network, and it's more a plus than an additional competition that you inherit when cooperating with others. We will also maybe focus a little bit in the discussion afterwards to this theme of cooperation. Let me go to the last slide from my side. Today there is the largest financing hurdles. That's also something I wanted to share with you. It's about these hurdles in convincing investors, something that must be of interest for all the PropTechs. Generally speaking, several factors are responsible for the failure of obtaining enough financing. It's not just one of them. Usually there's a couple of factors. At the very top, it's the lack of product maturity. As you can see on the very left-hand side, this has emerged as the main reason. Then almost 58% of the PropTechs described this point as either a major or then a medium-sized hurdle. 55% exactly, it identified a low number of reference projects as a major or medium-sized hurdle. Or that's what they answered as what they considered being the biggest hurdles. So a small number of reference projects. This means that it pays off for the PropTechs to do as many reference projects with the real estate industry and increasing the number of these projects. Limited scalability of the business idea and the core team that is too small can also generate skepticism on the side of the investors. The lack of a board of directors or an advisory board, on the other hand, is not very relevant. Other hurdles mentioned in or from the PropTechs have been a customer base too small or shareholder ratios which have not been clear enough as another hurdle. So let's close the results and going over to the panel discussion, or to deepen a little bit more this theme of success factors. With regard to the top 3 success factors, would you agree with the ranking, or do you consider any other factor being important and being left out right now? I would like to ask first Peter, because I think he has a good overview of the sector as well.
Thank you, Freddy. I'm absolutely convinced about and glad about the results of this study. The 3 first factors are, for me as well, the most important. So this is also not a rocket science that you have to focus on customer. That's for sure the first point. You have to solve a real customer problem, pain, otherwise you won't have success. I perhaps would change the second and the third success factor. For me, scalability more important than the team. If you don't have a scalable model, you will stay a consulting company which offers projects, and it must be scalable, and a good team has to bring the model to scalability.
Yes, I see that's a bit more the investor perspective, Peter, that scalability. I think from investor perspective, scalability is the most important factor. How about Basil? What do you see as the most important one, or are there any other factors that you miss right now?
I agree that the first, like the most important one is the first in your study, so the customer benefits. Because we need to feel the traction from the market to develop something that we will success. But and I also agree with the quality of the team, because I think that when we can create and have good discussions together, that's where the greatest ideas come from. And as Tuan said, he was a kind of a Swiss knife starter. And I think on the first stage, it's important to have that creativity and to test a lot of different solutions and features very quickly, to understand the market and find the one who's going to bring traction from the market.
I actually expected what you mentioned, that timing, speed is important. to be the first one coming up with a solution, or when you realize that different PropTechs are working on the same angle, that you can speed up. But timing, I think, has been in the middle field. Maybe the question was a bit difficult to understand. What is timing exactly? Is it being at the right spot in time with your solution, or does it mean speed? So that's may have been a little bit unsure. Yeah, I mean, let's talk maybe about the top one, customer benefit. I mean, seems to be a very logical one, or let's say a very trivial one, that for sure, because without customer benefit, you won't end up being a successful PropTech. But nevertheless, in my experience, I had a couple of meetings with PropTechs. And they presented beautiful technology with a lot of different products, and in the end it was very unclear what is the customer benefit. So I would like to ask you, how can you ensure that this focus on something which seems actually quite logical or quite trivial, how can you ensure that this is lived after? Maybe my question goes to Tuan. What do you do in your PropTech that you can guarantee this customer centricity, or that this customer benefit comes out in the end?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think I want to tell you a small story that we just had like a few weeks ago, where one customer bought our solution, and then they showed it to their customer, like their homeowner, and the woman that put the glasses on and saw their first for the first time how their future home's going to be was overwhelmed and started to cry. So it was an easy one to see where the gain is here, right? Because yeah, I think this is the beauty of our product, that we see it in the emotions of the people, that there is a real pain and a real gain.
I think the biggest hurdle for you is that the people try out your solution. Once they have tried, they every time they come back.
They're sold. Yes.
Maybe a question to Gideon. I mean, it's not just for the PropTechs. These success factors are important, because also the real estate industry is devoting a lot of time to the sector in order to have reference projects, trying to collaborate with the PropTechs, and by devoting that much of time, sometimes also money, must be important to choose the right one. Is it the case? And are you doing any examinations once you enter into a collaboration with a PropTech?
Absolutely. I mean, there's the fun part is before we start, like the phase before we actually start with a collaboration. And the most important part is the fit into our system. I mean, as a lead data scientist, we are looking at a data integration, at an API integration, at a functional integration, and all of this. Like having a silo in this fragmented life cycle is not what we're looking for. We're looking for something that actually fits into our whole work. That's the first part. If that works, we start with the project. And the next part is really the speed of development. We know that when we enter into a collaboration with our startups, they don't have the full product. It is absolutely clear to us that we have certain amount of like development which is going on. There is a sort of a MVP, a POC, which they show. And then as soon as we go, and I mean, we are quite a large customer and we want to have it at scale. We want to have hundreds of those products running at the same time. Do you have the capacity? Is it actually feasible? Or do you first have to hire 10,000 consultants which are working in the background? So this is really the part where we then see if that product actually is scalable. And that's what happens mostly in like the first year. And they like after a first POC, we can then see, okay, they can do that not just for one for 20, but they might also be possible to roll this out for 200 cases, which we then have. And so integration, data scalability, and are really important for us to see how this is going and how this is developing.
Thanks a lot, Gideon, because that has brought a couple of new factors a bit to the forefront, namely, as you said, integration, because we don't want just single solutions. We want to have embedded them in others. I think that might also be the reason for the next theme I would like to jump into, namely corporations. Some of the PropTechs realize that their customers don't want just to have single solutions, and then maybe out of this reason start to cooperate. Is this the case? Is this? Do you feel that you should actually enter with others into kind of ecosystems to have a broader value chain in order to offer, and with the knowledge that you actually should focus on your product, then you need alliance partners. How is this? Well, maybe my question goes to Basil. How do we cope with that?
Sorry, could you please just repeat the question?
I mean, Gideon now said that integration is quite important. We just, the bigger customers don't want just to have one single solution. Yeah. They want to have embedded it in broader solutions, maybe with a larger value chain. But you as a PropTech, you mainly are focused on your product, so you need actually to reach out to others in order maybe to cooperate with others to bring broader solutions to your customers. Is that the case? Is this one of the drivers for your cooperations that you do?
It's one of the drivers for sure. I think that cooperation between different players in the PropTech industry is fundamental. Because we can use the other competencies or skills from other PropTechs, but we can also, and it is written in your study, I don't have, I'm not on it right now, but it was said that the cooperation is good also for to have a broader
broader spectrum then.
Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry for my English.
No problem at all.
Chance to talk in English, so I'm a bit struggling, but yeah, I think cooperation is also a key success factor, and it's important. Yeah.
Are there also corporations that do not pay off? May I ask Tuan, have you experiences that tell you that that's also can be a difficult thing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we had a lot of contact with different startups as well, because yeah, it's a small community. You meet on startup events or fairs, and yeah, we try to cooperate where we see there is a fit. But I mean, they have their agenda as well, right? So if you try to work with startups, they have their focus. They have limited resources, so it's sometimes difficult to to have a timeline, a deadline, and then you say, okay, you need this by the end of the month, and sometimes it just doesn't work. Yeah.
Okay. May I ask Gideon, what do you prefer? Do you prefer a full bunch of PropTechs cooperating now, being a little bit difficult to handle maybe, or do you prefer the big company having merged already all these PropTechs together? How is it from your perspective?
I would prefer a third solution.
Oh, okay.
And that is if we have a consistent standardization. So we see that already with data models, which are getting standardized, especially like in the construction field, where we have BIM models, which are getting standardized. So that means if anybody wants to have like a connection to that, we have a standard set of connectors, which we then can present. And the tool which is underneath, which is the USP for the individual startups, that's really the unique. But the connectors outside, doesn't matter if it's property management or transaction management for acquisition and sales, that is what we want to see, like that there is a clear and open standard on how your solutions is presented to the world, not just on a proprietary homepage where you have to type in by hand, but in a way which is also integratable with any other system. And then as soon as you have these connectors, it doesn't matter if it's like a customer, a business-to-business connection, or another startup.
Thanks a lot, Gideon, for this idea, or for this theme. Standardization could even be the theme of the next year 5th survey, PropTech survey, because I think that would be a good theme as well. So it is a pleasure to discuss with you, but we're running out of time, and I would like to jump to the last question from my side, going to each of the PropTechs. I wanted to know from you, what is the success factors your PropTech is actually best positioned. I start with Peter.
I mentioned it in the beginning. We want, as Lucy, we want to be such a platform that integrates different PropTechs for one specific solution. And I'm convinced that especially not all these big companies, but all the middle segment companies need such integrated solutions. Otherwise, we cannot talk about the customer centricity. If you look only at the Swiss market, where you find more than 300 or 400 PropTechs, how should a KMU, as you said, should find a solution for its problems? They need some kind of an integration, and that is our approach. We want to be such a platform with such standards that Gideon mentioned, and that's our approach.
Thanks a lot, Peter. How about you, Basil? What is the success factor that your PropTech is best positioned?
I would say I'm hesitating between the timing and the business model. Okay. Because as I said before, the timing, like people tend to think more about sustainability and environmental impact and stuff. So it was a chance for us, but also the business model, because when you want to sell something to someone, the way you're gonna sell it is also important. And in our case, we found out a business model that fits the customer needs, because it's our optimization service is a pay as you save business model. So we are paid on the energy savings our clients make.
Okay, great. What about you, Hegias? And Tuan, with Hegias, sorry.
Yes, I think our success factor lies in the ease of use. I mean, our mission is to democratize virtual reality. So we want to enable everyone who is not tech savvy, a homeowner. I mean, we had people at the age of 85 using our solutions, and I mean, it's a learning curve of like 2 minutes, and they're walking around already, changing materials and furniture. So I think this is our main factor that we can be successful to democratize virtual reality.
Thanks a lot for your answers. I would like to give back the word to Lars.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you for giving it back. It's been a very interesting discussion. Thank you, everybody, for participating. We're going into the final stages of today's presentation, and I want to give a quick word to Gideon and his opinion from his view of Credit Suisse asset management in general. So Gideon, please.
Thank you very much. I mean, what we see is that real estate as an asset class is continuing to be interesting. It has still, in a low interest environment, proven to be a very lucrative and good investment, which increases the inflow. And with this, there's also an increase in pressure towards more efficiency. And that's really what all of the startups are doing. They're trying to help us be more efficient in what we are doing. And I think this is really where this is going. So there's this push towards a higher efficiency and productivity will lead to more startups being really integrated in our systems. And from therefore, like I don't see that there's like just small or large ones. If it is a platform or a unique one, there is as soon as there is a clear sort of benefit for us, I think there's going to be a clear future for that startup. And I wish you all a good luck in your ventures, and I'm hopefully see you in 4 to 8 years.
Thank you for your final words. Yes, we're at the end of our presentation today. Thank you everybody for participating. Thank you all our viewers and our guests who took the time to get an update about the Swiss PropTech scene. The study is available on our webpage. It's swissproptech.ch/study, so you can learn more about the study there and also get in touch with us and learn more about the Swiss PropTech scene in general. Now, just for some final notes from Swiss PropTech and our network, as you've heard before, unfortunately, our biggest event had to be postponed. So it's going to be on September 21st in Jet in Schlieren. So I hopefully see you there. And if that's not going to happen, you can also meet us in Expo Real in Munich, which will also be present. So yes, I want to thank each and everybody of you, and special thanks to Freddie and Gideon from Credit Suisse. It's been great pleasure and great fun to do this study with you. I think we were able to provide a real value to our scene, and I'm looking forward to the next edition. So I wish you all a sunny afternoon. Enjoy the good weather, and we'll see each other very soon. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Very much.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. See you.